All was well in the land of the gods, until a sudden desire for power and dominance erupted amongst them. In this once peaceful and bountiful region, a gruesome war filled with greed broke out, and it ultimately lasted over 1,000 years. The war reached its culmination with the extinction of the gods, and soon after, the area had split into 4 regions: Graud, Vermont, Syria, and Trecia. But there was a problem even here. The greed and selfishness continued. The country with the most potential to grow was Graud, developing into a civilization with the ability to use magic and monsters. Thus, this region proved itself to be the most power-hungry in the area, and started a war with the motive of conquering its neighboring countries. The other countries had but one choice. Vermont, Syria, and Trecia formed an alliance to fight against the Graud, because otherwise, not one of them had the slightest chance of survival. But even after the alliance had formed, they still reached a point during the war where they were on the verge of losing. Devastated and their morales crushed, they brought out their last weapon, the scientist, Dr. Hildenbrook. Dr. Hildenbrook was a brilliant professor from Vermont, and invented the Zepler engine, which was a most powerful engine, and created many of the weapons you see today, some of which including the airships. In order to communicate and work with the other countries within the alliance, Hildenbrook distributed this technology to those in Syria and Trecia. So, with time and effort, the Union finally won their hellish and exhausting war with Graud. And thanks to Dr. Hildenbrook, there was much jubilation and celebration for the nations of the Alliance. The Graud had finally perished at their hands, and everything would be back to normal. However, we all know peace does not last forever. After the Graud's defeat, the last survivors of the Graud devised a plan and formed the terrorist group called Dark Moon. And the terrorist ultimate plan? To kidnap Dr. Hildenbrook and restore the military might of the Graud nation. And so, with the kidnapping of Dr. Hildenbrook, government officials from the Alliance nations met to discuss what options were available for the rescue of the inventor and their hero, Dr. Hildenbrook. Ultimately, they decided on ex-soldier Kyle Lydon to find Hildenbrook, but the rescue efforts did not stop with just the government. After hearing that government officials were looking for Dr. Hildenbrook, a group of aristocrats lined the pockets of soldier Mary Linnell to find the professor, but their motive did not lie in the sake of the professor's safety, but for the fame and recognition after rescuing such an important member of society. News of Dr. Hildenbrook's disappearance spread like wildfire, from government officials to aristocrats, and then tearing through city slums and across countrysides. Before long, every city within the Alliance nations knew of Dr. Hildenbrook's disappearance, and Dr. Hildenbrook being the hero of the war, saving everyone from total defeat, it was in everyone's best interest to find him. Even the mafia and the gangsters put their funds together to hire out a professional in the field of magic named Coco LeBeau. Who else would join the search for Dr. Hildenbrook? The gravity of Dr. Hildenbrook's kidnapping weighed heavily upon the Alliance's mind, and before long, even the Church had responded. The Vatican Church of Vermont had sent forth the priest named Patan Cromwell. And so, the story begins with the 4 heroes of the Alliance being sent forth to rescue Dr. Hildenbrook.